Hey everyone, I'm Janelle, and today we're going to just redo yesterday's community hall. I was really busy, so when I was doing it, I had a lot on my mind, and I was in the middle of meetings, so I felt like the message wasn't getting across clearly enough. So now that I had some cool down time and I had, the morning to myself, I wanted to take the time to revisit this conversation. So I know that the community halls have been a little shoddy the last couple of weeks because we had a lot going on. And obviously, when I had said that there were stuff that I couldn't say at the time, obviously, you know why now with the campaign that we have. So, what I want to start with and getting into is allyship across marginalized communities. This is something that we have been talking about. This was in our last quarter's Reflections magazine that came out in June. So, what I want to go over, over the summer. So, what I want to go over with everyone is what allyship across marginalized communities looks like and why we fight on the front lines with other marginalized communities. So let me make this a little bigger for you because I feel like our Instagram is a really good reflection and showcase of why we work with marginalized communities. So when our Reflections magazine came out, we featured Royal Parker, a transgender veteran who has gone through military sexual trauma. And the reason why we work with other movements and people that are also disenfranchised is because people of color and people who are disenfranchised, I think a video is coming on soon. Yeah, let me let you guys watch this. Meet Royal Parker. So that's a really good example of showcasing marginalized communities, people that are not necessarily focused on. So when we work with veterans, right, and that are in our community, everyone has a different background and a different story. So, a lot of our community is part of the LGBTQIA community. Most of the movement is part of the LGBTQIA community. And also, we have a lot of minorities, right? Women and minorities. And the reason for that is because there are systemic issues of racism and sexism that are precursors and that cause military sexual trauma. So the decision to really fight on the front lines for with other movements has been and always will be part of our strategy, right? Like that's important for our survival and that's important for other people's survival and other organizations. So I'm just going to go down to the bottom of our Instagram so I can show you the Black Lives Matter protest. And I want to explain to you why this is important and why this is just important as what we're doing within the movement. So this is our Instagram. And our Instagram museum has, different things that we've done in the movement. So, Black Lives Matter. Over the summer, there was a lot of protest after George Floyd's death, well, after George Floyd's murder, excuse me, and that were, all over the country. So I had spoke and helped organize and lead the Black Lives Matter march that was here in New York, right in the Hudson Valley. And so, like, here's a statement I made when I gave the speech. Black Lives Matter. For some people in America, that statement seems radical, when in reality, we as a society cannot say everyone's life is equal and meaningful until we're willing to acknowledge that in 2020, we still treat Black lives as 3/5 a person. So just historically, if you know this, that Black people were not seen as people, right? During slavery, they were considered 3/5 a person, and that's why they were denied their rights. So we still treat Black people like that today. And that's a bold statement, but it's also a very accurate statement when we look at the criminal justice system. When we look at law enforcement, when we look at a lot of different systems, minorities are significantly disenfranchised and treated as a less than. So these fights of, being on the front lines and fighting with, other organizations, other movements is important because allyship is what leads to change, right? When you are a minority and you're fighting. So, for instance, like the campaigns that we have going on right now. So, the Fight for Our Freedom campaign, the reason why this is significant to where we are now is because for us to even, make it to the point that we're at with, going to Washington, D.C. and really being able to help the families, a lot of Black women in power helped us to get there and helped us to get here. And the reason why I'm saying this is, that trust was facilitated through MSTM and different organizations that work with Black Lives Matter because we were willing to take a strong stance. And we were willing to say that Black Lives Matter, and we were willing to fight in the forefront. So we took a stand and decided to make strong statements that Black Lives Matter, and that's who we as an organization are aligning ourselves with. And when it came down to, getting everything that we needed to get done for organizing, a lot of powerful Black women came out and supported us behind the scenes. So, a lot of organizing that you see, this is the police in New York, by the way, the state police that are like more militarized than the actual police, which is crazy, right? Like, look at their gear. They're like ready for war. And this was at a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest in New York. All right. So, um, but anyway, so the Black Lives Matter protest, so this is like a speech that I gave about segregation, because segregation still exists in Dutchess County. And, being willing to stand up and just talk about these injustices in a public forum, right? And the reason this links to where we are is because allyship, what that means is being willing to put yourself in the front lines for others. And in turn, allyship is when they're willing to come out for you. I'm going to use that for diversity and culture. All right, here. So this is where, transgender LGBTQIA rights, right? And this was Black Trans Lives Matter. And that's also because, just to give you a little bit of background, in the Black transgender individuals, the statistics the statistics of what will happen to somebody who's Black and transgender is someone, how do I put this? Someone who's Black and transgender is likely to die. I think the statistics, and I don't know 100%, but I think it's around 80% of Black transgender women die before age 30, and it's because of violence against them. So that's the reason um, that we also need to align ourselves with other marginalized communities, because what happens is workplace violence in the military that leads to military sexual trauma that happens to service members. That's violence, right, against women and minorities. And when you're looking at people who are Black and transgender, what's happening to them is that their life expectancy is getting cut short due to violence against them. It's the same fight. So the reality is when we're helping other communities and other people, um there you go. So this was at the Black Lives Matter protest held in Poughkeepsie, where Black trans speakers from all over the Hudson Valley spoke about their struggles. Royal Parker detailed his experience in his speech about the military, and he led the demonstrations for the Black Trans Lives Matter march. So Black Trans Lives Matter is a statement that many people want to be appalled by, but in reality, Black trans people have it the hardest out of any marginalized group. Now imagine being a Black transgender veteran who experienced military sexual trauma on deployment. That story is the real life experience of Royal Parker. So that's who I had showed you in the beginning that we featured over the summer. And what I'm saying is that a lot of our community is a lot of our community hold on, there's like a fight in the comments. Um, I can align with this, and I am a Black female by. I mean, again, that's your preference, but I will say that a lot of Black women came out to support us. And I'm gonna give, you know what? Let me give you guys an example right now. So, getting into what I'm talking about is supporting marginalized communities, the LGBTQIA community, the Black community, other minority communities that we're aligning ourselves with, in turn has helped us, right? So let me go up here. Okay, so this photo. I'm gonna tell you the story behind this photo right here, so you understand. I've been to the Commandant's house before, and I've dealt with the Marine Corps, especially with protesting and dealing with everything. And I'm not gonna rehash that right now. But if you want to understand the dynamics of what it is to actually do advocacy, and be on the front lines when you're fighting for the military, especially the Marine Corps, to raise their standards, that's a really difficult task. It's not a walk in the park. It's not a walk in the park at all. And there's a lot of fuck shit that the Marine Corps will do to silence people, like to make sure that the word does not get out, to make sure that advocacy does not get out, and an awareness about the culture in the Marine Corps. That's just the reality of where we are. And this photo is very powerful because Commander Kane runs the first district in Washington, D.C., and she's the first African American commander in Washington, D.C., is metropolitan police history to become a commander in the first district. Um, and we, obviously worked with the department to tell them that we thought that the Marine Corps would try to stop us from doing a press conference, on the basis of nonsense, right? And that they would use force to do so. So having these conversations with her and the chief of police, Peter Newman. So in Washington, D.C., this led us to create a peaceful environment where our First Amendment rights were upheld. And this is what led the families to be able to come out and tell their stories. And, Commander Kane, again, is an African American woman. And, she's in a powerful position. Now, she's not the only powerful Black woman that helped us get to this point. Many other powerful women in very powerful positions have helped us because of the alliance and allyship that we have. So even though you might see me on the front lines and what I look like, that doesn't mean that there's not Black people in power supporting us. Like, we're very strongly aligned with the Black community when it comes to what we're doing to end military sexual trauma. And a lot of that also comes from the fact that there's a relationship between what's happening with Black Lives Matter and law enforcement and what's happening with MST and minorities in the military. And for those of you who don't know this, in the military, people that are of Latinx descent or Hispanic descent, like myself, are at the highest risk per capita to go through sexual violence. So Hispanic people go through military sexual trauma more than any other population goes through sexual violence. So there is a relationship between what's happening right now systemically with law enforcement and the military, so the allyship across marginalized communities makes sense. Like, it's logical to do that. So that's something that I wanted to talk about, because what happens when we're working together, even though our objectives might seem different immediately, Because one of the things that I've gotten as pushback is like, why are you focusing on Black Lives Matter? Like over the summer, a lot of people were like, that has nothing to do with military sexual trauma. That has nothing to do with that. And, a part of that is like, there's people that are not on the front lines in politics. They're not involved in movement politics. So, like, their knowledge of politics is what they see and only what they see on, TV and social media. But being on the front lines, there's a very strong relationship between law enforcement and the military, and then what happens to minorities. So there's a strong relationship, and that marriage both comes from the same problem, and that problem is white supremacy. So it is the same exact fight, which is why allyship across marginalized communities is vital and important that we do that, and important that we align ourselves the way that we need to. So that's that's why I'm saying, connecting the dots for you to understand, like, here we were 6 months ago, and here's where we were fighting for other people, and understanding that there are Black veterans, there are transgender veterans, there are minority veterans, and on a per capita basis, the minorities that we have in the movement, it's significant, which is why we're so diverse compared to other organizations that you would typically see, because there's a systemic issue that leads to that. So, like I said, for us to accomplish what we've accomplished, it's because we've had the support of other minorities in powerful positions that have helped us get here. So, I believe in giving credit, and I'm going to explain why I feel this way, because it leads to the next conversation that I want to have. So the first part, I have to go to school. Sorry, I'm reading comments. All right. So what I was talking about is, now I am, or how the best way I could explain this is how I identify. I identify as a white passing minority. Both of my parents, you guys know my name is Janelle Marina Mendez. And to give you a little bit of background on my story is, I come from a very, very Puerto Rican household. Both of my parents' first language is Spanish. And, I look like I'm white. Um, and I have white features, and I went to a white school in Westchester County with a lot of white people growing up in elementary school. So I look and I sound like I'm white. However, my culture and my identity and how I grew up and my family is Puerto Rican. Like, that is my culture. So I am a Puerto Rican woman. And it's highly, highly, highly offensive to me when people call me a white woman, because it takes away from my struggle and what I've had to deal with. So for me, identifying as a white passing minority or a white passing Puerto Rican woman, I've had different privileges granted to me, and I've also had different hardships. So, what for me particularly, there are certain aspects where I know that I have privilege, and I use that privilege and the fact that I'm white passing to help spread awareness. However, I don't want that for me to be the end all be all. So what ends up happening is, for me, it's important to raise and lift the voices of minorities. It's very important to me. So when you look at our content and you look at our Reflections magazine or our content in general, it's highly diverse. So let me show you some of the content on our page, so you can see, like, just the diversity in culture, the diversity, different cultures, different attire and wardrobes, to anything, hair color. Like, there's so much diversity and ethnicity, like, that we showcase different people from different backgrounds and what their stories are like, right? And one of the stories that I love, 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 here we go. Harpy Daniels. This is one of, so during Pride, we did some features on Harpy Daniels, and um, we had both of the twins on over the summer, and I just love this story because so Harvey Daniels is a U.S. Navy U.S. Navy sailor who's currently serving, who does drag. And like one of the reasons I love this is just so diverse and unusual for someone to see in the military, and it's just a great way to create awareness about all of the different people that we have serving in the U.S. military, and like the ability for him to live out his life authentically while serving our nation. Like that's what freedom is. That is what freedom is for everyone. And you know, you might not agree with his lifestyle or his choosings, and you might, you know, that might not be for you, but at the end of the day, like that is him living out his true self, right? Like that's Josh living out his true self and living out his best life, you know, serving the country and also being his true self, and getting to do drag and be Harvey Daniels. So what I'm saying is that diversity is important because the US military is not made up of just all white cis men. Like it's not, right? There's women, there's minorities, there's people with different backgrounds. And oh, hold on one second, you guys. I'm gonna put this on pause. All right. So I'm gonna have to wrap up soon, but I'm just gonna go over this really quick with you guys. So because I really wanted to touch base with you on this, and I got to get to the next part. But yeah, so one of the things that I think is really important is that we do have the military trending differently, and we do have the military opening up to diversity because that's important in our fight to end MST, right? Like that's super important. And that's also important for the fact that there's cultural diversity that's also in the military that's not often acknowledged. So let me get to, this one's a good one. When we're looking at the campaign that we're doing now, there's a lot of cultural diversity that we see even in the Marine Corps. And when we're looking at the systemic issues that are happening, you can see with cultural diversity is what makes the military strong. And what I want to point out is on the right-hand side of this picture, for the flyer that we have Celeste Largo, whose family comes from a line of Navajo Dene code talkers. And I don't know how many of you know this, but during World War II, the reason we won World War II was because the Japanese were breaking every code that Americans came out with. So the Navajo language was used for code talkers because they couldn't break it. They couldn't break the language code that was made to send communication across the Marine Corps at the time. So Celeste's family line comes from that, and it's diversity that helped us to win World War II. So when it comes to our national security, diversity is extremely strong, the strongest point that we can have and the strongest asset that we have that really helps us to facilitate and ensure that Americans are safe. And these are just topics that we normally don't want to talk about. So this is just what I wanted to get in touch with you guys about, like why it's so important to represent and participate with other communities. Oh, there we go. And why we fight for everyone, you know, and why we take that stance so boldly in comparison to other organizations that have typically told us not to work with other organizations and keep our focus and to do that. That's just not a position that we're ever going to take. Like that's just not going to happen. So I wanted to go over that with you guys, but I do want to let everyone get back to their Saturday and to enjoy themselves. So I'm going to wrap up for today, but I did want to go over this with everyone to talk about this for today. So enjoy your weekend, take care, and, you know, be safe, make good choices. All right, bye.